Ophelia Grant stared at the contents of the suitcase and felt her blood run cold. 50 red velvet boxes, perfectly arranged in neat rows, each one labeled with a woman's name she didn't recognize. Sarah Chin, Priya Mehta, Jennifer Morrison, Amanda Brooks. Names that meant nothing to her, yet somehow felt ominous sitting there in what was supposed to be her luggage. Her hands trembled as she reached for the first box. The velvet was soft under her fingers, expensive. She opened it slowly, half expecting it to be empty, some kind of joke. A diamond ring gleamed back at her. Massive. Flawless. The kind of ring that cost more than her car. She opened another box. Another ring. Different style. Equally stunning. And another. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be real. She'd just grabbed her suitcase from baggage claim at JFK 20 minutes ago. Black Toomey hardshell, same as half the business travelers in America. She'd been exhausted from the LA conference, desperate to get home to her Brooklyn apartment, looking forward to sweatpants and leftover Thai food. Now she was standing in her living room at 7:15 on Valentine's Eve, staring at what had to be millions of dollars worth of engagement rings that didn't belong to her. Ophelia's breath came faster. She needed to think. She needed to call someone. The police? The airport? But what would she even say? Her eyes caught on something else at the bottom of the suitcase. A leather portfolio, slim and professional looking. She pulled it out with shaking hands and opened it. Files. Detailed files on each woman whose name appeared on those ring boxes. Not just names but photographs, backgrounds, personal information. Sarah Chin, 29, architect from Manhattan, loves jazz music and Ethiopian food. Priya Mehta, 32, pediatric surgeon, vegetarian, runs every morning in Central Park. This was insane. This was beyond insane. Ophelia flipped through page after page, her stomach twisting tighter with each one. Someone had compiled extensive research on 50 different women. Their jobs, their hobbies, their routines, their fears. It read like intelligence dossiers, clinical and thorough and deeply, deeply wrong. And then she reached the last file. Her own face stared back at her from the page. The photograph wasn't from social media. It wasn't from any photo she'd ever posted online. This picture had been taken today. This morning. At LAX airport. She was holding her oat milk latte, wearing her navy blazer, completely unaware that someone was watching her, capturing her image. Ophelia Grant. 28. Senior marketing consultant at Brighton and Associates. Lives at 418, Sterling Place, apartment 3B, Brooklyn. Starbucks order. Grande oat milk latte, extra shot, no sugar. Favorite restaurant. Roberta's Pizza. Biggest fear. Dying alone. She dropped the portfolio like it had burned her. How did they know that? She'd never told anyone about that fear, had barely admitted it to herself during late-night anxiety spirals. Yet here it was, typed out in neat black font, her deepest insecurity cataloged like data. At the bottom of her file was a checkmark. And beneath that, a handwritten note in elegant script. Confirmed for 8 p.m. Le Bernardine. Table 12. PSW. Ophelia checked her phone. 7:17. Her apartment suddenly felt too small, too exposed. Someone had compiled this information on her. Someone knew where she lived. Someone was expecting her somewhere in 43 minutes. Her phone buzzed in her hand and she nearly dropped it. Text message. Unknown number. The black dress is in the garment bag. Car arrives at 7:30. Please don't be late. PSW. Ophelia spun around, her heart in her throat. There, hanging on her coat rack near the door, was a garment bag she absolutely had not put there. Black fabric, designer label visible even from across the room. Someone had been in her apartment. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely unzip the bag. Inside was a dress that belonged on a red carpet. Valentino, if the label was to be believed. Black silk with a plunging neckline and a slit that went up to there. Elegant and expensive and exactly her size. Beneath the dress were shoes. Christian Louboutin heels with the signature red soles, size 7.5. Her exact size. And a small black clutch, also designer. In the clutch was a business card. Heavy cardstock, minimalist design. Just a name and a title. Park Sang-woo. CEO, Park Industries. Ophelia's mind raced. She grabbed her laptop, fingers flying over the keys. Park Sang-woo. The search results loaded and her breath caught. 31 years old. Korean-American tech billionaire. CEO and founder of Park Industries, a company worth $8 billion. Specialized in artificial intelligence and machine learning. Intensely private, rarely photographed, never seen with romantic partners. One of the youngest self-made billionaires in the world. And apparently, he was expecting her for dinner in 40 minutes. This was absolutely insane. She should call the police right now. Report a break-in, report stalking, report whatever the hell this was. No rational person would actually consider going to meet a stranger who had broken into their apartment and compiled a detailed file on their entire life. But Ophelia found herself staring at that dress, at those shoes, at the business card with its simple, elegant font. 50 women, 50 rings, 50 files full of personal information. And she was the one with a checkmark. Her phone buzzed again. Another text. I know this seems overwhelming. I know you're probably terrified. But I promise you, Ophelia, everything will make sense if you just give me 2 hours. 2 hours to explain. After that, if you want to leave, I'll have you driven home and you'll never hear from me again. All I'm asking for is a chance. PSW. Ophelia looked at the message for a long time. Every logical part of her brain screamed danger. But there was another part, quieter but persistent, that whispered what if. What if this wasn't some creepy stalker situation? What if there was actually an explanation that made sense? What if Park Sang-woo was just spectacularly bad at normal human interaction, but had good intentions? What if she spent the rest of her life wondering what would have happened if she'd just been brave enough to find out? Have you ever had a moment where curiosity battled with common sense? Where you knew you should walk away, but something pulled you forward anyway? Drop a comment and let me know what you would do. And hit that subscribe button because you need to see what Ophelia decides next. She made her decision. Ophelia grabbed the dress. She had 8 minutes to get ready, and she wasn't going to waste them second-guessing herself. The silk slid over her skin like water, fitting perfectly as if it had been tailored specifically for her body. Which, given everything else, it probably had been. She slipped on the Louboutin heels, transferred her phone and keys to the designer clutch. Before leaving, she did one smart thing. She took photos of everything. The suitcase full of rings. The files. Her own dossier with that creepy photo from this morning. She sent them all to her best friend Jamie with a message that said, going to Le Bernardin. If I don't text you by 11 p.m., call the police and show them these photos. This is the guy, Park Sang-woo, CEO of Park Industries. Jamie's response was immediate. Are you insane? Possibly, Ophelia typed back. But I need to know. She turned her phone to silent and took one last look at herself in the mirror. The woman staring back looked confident, elegant, nothing like the exhausted consultant who'd stumbled off a plane an hour ago. She looked like someone who belonged in a world of private cars and Michelin-starred restaurants. At exactly 7:30, a black Rolls-Royce pulled up outside her building. The drive to Le Bernardin felt surreal. Ophelia watched Manhattan blur past the tinted windows, her heart racing with a mixture of fear and anticipation she couldn't quite name. The driver was professional and silent, offering no clues about what awaited her. When they arrived, a restaurant attendant was already waiting to escort her inside. The interior of Le Bernardin was everything she'd imagined. Understated luxury, soft lighting, the quiet murmur of wealth. Eyes followed her as she walked through the dining room, and she felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with the dress. Table 12 was in a private corner, partially secluded from the rest of the restaurant. And there he was. Park Sang-woo stood as she approached, and Ophelia's first thought was that photographs really didn't do him justice. Tall, lean, wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. His dark hair was styled with precision, his face all elegant angles and dark eyes that locked onto hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. He was younger than she'd expected. 31, she reminded herself. Only 3 years older than her. Ophelia, he said, and his voice was warm with just a hint of Korean inflection. Thank you for coming. Please sit. She sat because her legs suddenly felt unsteady. He waited until she was settled before sitting across from her, his movements careful and controlled. For a moment they just looked at each other. Then Ophelia leaned forward. Okay, start talking. Because right now, this looks like the most elaborate stalking operation I've ever seen, and I need you to convince me not to walk out of here and straight to the police. Sang-woo nodded slowly, as if he'd expected exactly this reaction. Fair. I'll tell you everything, but I want to be completely honest with you. What I did was unconventional. Some would say invasive. But I had reasons, and I'd like the chance to explain them. Explain how you photographed me without my permission? How you got into my apartment? How you know my deepest fears? Ophelia's voice was sharp, controlled anger bleeding through. I created an algorithm, Sang-woo said simply. 6 months ago, I decided to approach finding a life partner the same way I approach everything else in my business. Logically. Systematically. I built an AI system that analyzed compatibility based on values, interests, personality traits, life goals. I fed it everything about myself and had it search for women in New York who would theoretically be most compatible with me. He pulled out a tablet and slid it across the table. The screen showed complex graphs and data visualizations. It found 50 potential matches. Women who, on paper, aligned with who I am and what I'm looking for. Each one scored on hundreds of compatibility metrics. He paused. Your score was 97.3%. The next highest was 81%. You weren't just the best match, Ophelia. You were exponentially better than anyone else. Ophelia stared at the tablet, then at him. So you stalked me. I researched you. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, you invaded my privacy, photographed me without consent, and broke into my apartment. I didn't break in. I paid your building superintendent to let me in to leave a gift. Everything in that garment bag was a gift. Nothing was taken. And yes, I had someone photograph you this morning, which I acknowledge was invasive. But dating apps encourage people to stalk each other's social media before meeting. I just did it more thoroughly. That's not the same thing, and you know it. Ophelia's hands clenched in her lap. You can't just optimize human connection like it's a business problem. Why not? Sangwoo's voice was calm, but there was passion underneath it now. I've spent 10 years building my company. I've worked 100-hour weeks, sacrificed everything for success. Now I'm 31 and I realized I don't know how to connect with people anymore. Every woman I've tried to date either wants my money or is intimidated by my success. So yes, I approach this like a problem to solve. Maybe that makes me broken. But at least I'm honest about it. Ophelia wanted to stay angry. She wanted to maintain her righteous indignation. But something in his words resonated with her own loneliness, her own fear of never finding real connection. The other 49 women, she said. What about them? Security decoys. If the suitcase was stolen, there'd be no way to know which woman was the actual target. It was meant to protect you. How thoughtful. You violated my privacy to protect my privacy. I know how it sounds. Do you? Ophelia leaned forward. Because it sounds like you think you can code your way into someone's heart. That's not how love works, Sangwoo. You can't calculate feelings. Maybe not. But I can identify compatibility. Whether we have chemistry beyond the data, that's what tonight is about. He signaled to a waiter. Can we order? I promise the food is incredible. And you can ask me anything you want. Complete transparency. Ophelia should have left. Every instinct screamed at her to walk away. But she picked up the menu instead. Fine. First question. What's your biggest fear? Dying alone, Sangwoo said without hesitation. Building an empire, but never building a home. Never having someone who sees me as just Sangwoo, not as a CEO or a bank account. Never experiencing real love because I was too afraid to be vulnerable. The same fear written in both their files. But hearing him say it out loud, watching genuine emotion flicker across his carefully composed face, it hit differently. They ordered. As they ate, the conversation flowed more easily than Ophelia expected. He told her about growing up poor in Queens, his parents' grocery store, working there every day after school. She told him about her mother, the single parent who'd raised her on books and stubborn optimism. She died when I was 24, Ophelia said quietly. Cancer. It felt like losing my compass. I'm sorry. She would have hated this. The algorithm, all of it. She believed in serendipity. Magic. Love at first sight. And you. Ophelia thought about her ex, about 3 years wasted on someone who'd cheated with his personal trainer. I used to believe in magic. Now I think maybe your approach makes more sense. At least it's honest. Sangwoo smiled. I want to propose something. Spend tomorrow with me. Valentine's Day. Let me show you that compatibility on paper might translate to real connection. At the end of the day, you decide. If you feel nothing, we part ways. If you feel something, we explore it. And if I say no right now, then I thank you for this evening and you never hear from me again. Ophelia studied his face, looking for manipulation. But he seemed genuine. Maybe even nervous. This is completely insane, she said. I know. You know that, right? This is unhinged. I'm aware. He smiled. But you're still here. He wasn't wrong. She was curious. Sitting across from him, talking, watching the way he listened with complete attention, she felt something she hadn't felt in 2 years. Hope. Before she could respond, the restaurant doors burst open. A woman stormed in, heels clicking sharply against the floor. Stunning, Korean, wearing a red dress that looked painted on. Her face was flushed with fury and something desperate. She was carrying Ophelia's actual suitcase. Park Sang-wo, the woman's voice cut through the refined atmosphere like a knife. Every head in the restaurant turned. I finally found you. Sangwoo's face went pale. He stood slowly. Christine, what are you doing here? Christine stalked toward their table, her eyes landing on Ophelia with pure venom. Who is this? Some algorithm match you think can replace me? She slammed the suitcase down. I know about your little project. The 50 women. The compatibility scores. And I know I should have been number 1. The restaurant had gone completely silent, every wealthy patron watching like this was dinner theater. Ophelia looked at Sangwoo, then at Christine, then at the suitcase. The absurdity of the situation hit her all at once. And she started laughing. She couldn't help it. Genuine, borderline hysterical laughter bubbled up from her chest. Both Sangwoo and Christine stared at her like she'd lost her mind. "I'm sorry," Ophelia gasped between laughs. "I'm sorry, this is just... You created an algorithm to remove chaos from dating and this is what happens? Your ex shows up with my actual luggage? This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever experienced." She looked at Sangwoo, tears streaming down her face from laughing. "You wanted to optimize love and you got a soap opera instead. How's that working out for you? Want to see how Ophelia handles this insane situation? Hit that like button and drop a comment telling us what you'd do if your date's ex crashed your Valentine's dinner." Christine's face flushed darker. "You think this is funny? You have no idea what you've walked into." Ophelia wiped her eyes, her laughter subsiding, but a smile still playing at her lips. "Actually, I think I have a pretty good idea. Let me guess. You and Sangwoo dated years ago. You broke up with him. Now he's a billionaire and suddenly you're interested again. Did I miss anything?" Christine's joy tightened. "You don't know anything about us. Then enlighten me." Ophelia leaned back in her chair, surprisingly calm now that the initial shock had passed. Maybe it was the wine. Maybe it was just that after everything tonight, an ex-girlfriend showing up felt almost predictable. "How exactly did you end up with my suitcase?" "I was on your flight from LA," Christine said, her voice tight. "I've been tracking Sangwoo for months. When I saw his assistant at JFK with that suitcase, I knew something was happening. I paid a baggage handler $500 to switch the tags on 2 black Toomey cases. I thought maybe, just maybe, my name would be in those files. That after all these years, he'd finally forgiven me." She turned to Sangwoo, her expression cracking to show the hurt beneath the anger. "But I wasn't in there, was I? 50 women, and I didn't even make the list." Sangwoo's voice was gentle but firm. "Christine, we broke up 10 years ago. You ended things. You chose Marcus Cho and his corner office and his BMW. I respected your decision then, and I've moved on." "I made a mistake," Christine said, and now there were tears in her eyes. "I was young and stupid and scared. You were nobody then. Just a programmer with dreams and no money. I didn't see what you could become." "Exactly," Sangwoo said quietly. "You didn't love me. You loved what you thought I might become. And now you love what I did become. But you never loved who I actually am." The words hung in the air, brutal in their honesty. Christine looked like she'd been slapped. "That's not fair. Isn't it? You had 10 years to reach out. 10 years to apologize or explain or try to reconnect. But you only came looking once the money was there." Sangwoo's voice wasn't cruel, just tired. "I'm not angry with you, Christine. But I'm not interested in revisiting something that ended a decade ago." Ophelia watched the exchange, feeling like she was intruding on something deeply personal. But she also noticed something else. The way Sangwoo handled Christine, with kindness but clear boundaries. The way he didn't waver or second-guess himself. It was impressive. Christine wiped her eyes, her makeup smudging slightly. She looked at Ophelia with something that might have been resignation. "He'll do the same thing to you, you know. Analyze you like a science experiment. Reduce everything you are to data points and percentages. Is that really what you want?" "I don't know yet," Ophelia said honestly. "But at least he's upfront about it. At least he's not pretending to be something he's not." Christine laughed bitterly. "You'll see. When the algorithm fails, when real life gets messy and complicated and doesn't fit into his neat little boxes, you'll see." She grabbed the handle of Ophelia's suitcase. "Here, take your actual luggage. I hope you packed something comfortable because fairy tales don't last past midnight." With that, Christine turned and walked out of the restaurant, her red dress a flash of color against the muted elegance of Le Bernardin. The other diners slowly returned to their meals, the show apparently over. Ophelia and Sangwoo sat in silence for a moment. Then Sangwoo spoke, his voice quiet. "I'm sorry. You shouldn't have had to witness that. Are you kidding? That was the most entertainment I've had in months." Ophelia took a sip of her wine. Though I have to say, she had a point. What happens when life doesn't follow your algorithm? When things get messy? "Then I adapt," Sangwoo said simply. "An algorithm is just a tool, Ophelia. It brought me to you. What happens next isn't about data. It's about whether we choose to take a chance on each other. Even though we just met and this entire situation is completely insane, especially because of that." He smiled, and it transformed his entire face, making him look younger, less guarded. "I've spent 10 years being careful, calculated, risk-averse in my personal life while taking huge risks in business. Maybe it's time I took a risk on something that actually matters." Ophelia felt her heart skip. Damn it. She was actually falling for this. For him. For the honest awkwardness of a brilliant man who'd tried to solve love like a math problem and ended up creating chaos instead. Okay, she heard herself say. I'll spend Valentine's Day with you. But on one condition. Name it. No more files. No more research. No more data. You're going to get to know me the old-fashioned way. By asking questions and listening to answers and being surprised by things you couldn't have predicted. Deal. Sang-woo extended his hand across the table. Ophelia shook it, feeling the warmth of his palm against hers. And I get to ask you anything I want. Complete honesty, no corporate PR answers. I can do that. Good. Then here's my first real question. Ophelia leaned forward. Why me? And I don't want to hear about compatibility percentages. I want to know what made you look at my file and think, yes, her. What was it? Sang-woo was quiet for a moment, considering. Your smile. My smile. In one of the photos the algorithm pulled, you were at a street fair in Brooklyn. You were laughing at something, your head thrown back, completely unself-conscious. You looked joyful. Free. Like you weren't afraid to take up space in the world. He paused. I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt that way. And I thought, maybe if I could find someone who still knew how to experience joy like that, they could teach me how to do it again. Ophelia's throat tightened. That was the photo from the Summer Street Festival, 3 months after her breakup with her ex. Her friend had dragged her out of her apartment, insisted she needed to stop moping. She'd been laughing at a terrible juggler who kept dropping his pins. It had been one of the first moments she'd felt human again after the heartbreak. That's a good answer, she managed. It's the truth. They finished dinner in a different atmosphere now. Lighter. The tension from earlier had transformed into something else, something that felt like possibility. They talked about everything and nothing. His company's latest AI project. Her dreams of starting her own marketing agency. Their mutual hatred of cilantro. The way they both read the endings of mystery novels first, because they couldn't stand the suspense. When the check came, Sang-woo paid without making a show of it. As they stood to leave, he hesitated. I had planned an entire evening. There's a car waiting to take us to the High Line, then to a private rooftop in Soho, where I'd arranged for a violinist and champagne under the stars. He looked almost embarrassed. But after everything that just happened, that feels excessive. So I'm going to do something I never do in business. What's that? I'm going to improvise. What do you want to do, Ophelia? Right now. No algorithm, no plan. Just tell me what sounds good to you. Ophelia thought about it. The High Line sounded beautiful. The rooftop sounded romantic. But both also sounded carefully calculated, designed to impress. She wanted something real. Pizza, she said. There's a place in Brooklyn, Roberta's. Best pizza in the city. Let's take the subway there, eat with our hands, and talk like normal people instead of whatever this has been. Sang-woo's smile was genuine. When's the last time I took the subway? Probably 5 years. Then it's past time. They walked out of Le Bernardin together, leaving behind the white tablecloths and hushed luxury. Outside, the February air was cold and sharp. Ophelia shivered and Sang-woo immediately shrugged off his jacket, draping it over her shoulders. Very gentlemanly, she teased. My mother raised me right. They walked to the nearest subway station, Sang-woo looking slightly out of place in his expensive suit among the late-night commuters. Ophelia caught him glancing around with what looked like fascination, like he was seeing the city he'd lived in his entire life for the first time. On the train, they sat close together, their shoulders touching as the car swayed. A street performer moved through the cars, playing saxophone. Sang-woo pulled out his wallet and handed the man a $100 bill. The saxophone player's eyes widened. Bless you, man. Seriously. After he moved on, Ophelia nudged Sang-woo. You know most people give $1, right? I know. But he was good. And it's Valentine's Eve. Everyone deserves a little magic. Ophelia felt something warm bloom in her chest. This man who'd compiled files on 50 women, who'd created an algorithm to find love, who'd invaded her privacy in ways that should have terrified her, was also the kind of person who gave $100 bills to subway musicians. People were complicated. Data couldn't capture that. Would you take a chance on someone who started things completely wrong but might actually be exactly right? Tell us in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe because Ophelia's Valentine's Day is about to get even more interesting. Roberta's was packed despite the late hour. The industrial space buzzed with energy, the smell of wood-fired pizza and the sound of laughter filling the air. It was the complete opposite of Le Bernardin's hushed refinement, and Ophelia saw Sang-woo's shoulders relax the moment they walked in. They managed to snag a small table in the corner after a 15-minute wait. Sang-woo looked completely out of place in his tailored suit among the Brooklyn hipsters in flannel and vintage band t-shirts, but he didn't seem to notice or care. What's good here? He asked, studying the menu. Everything. But the bee sting pizza is my favorite. Spicy sopressata, chili, honey. Sweet and heat. Sounds perfect. They ordered, along with a bottle of red wine that cost a fraction of what they'd drunk at Le Bernardin, but somehow tasted better in this setting. When the pizza arrived, Ophelia watched with amusement as Sang-woo picked up a slice with his hands, a small drop of honey landing on his expensive shirt. He noticed her watching. What? Nothing. Just trying to reconcile billionaire CEO with guy who has pizza sauce on his chin. He wiped his face quickly, looking embarrassed. Did I get it? Yeah. She grinned. You're kind of a mess, you know that? I'm starting to realize that. He took another bite. This is incredible. How did I not know about this place? Because you've spent the last 10 years eating at Michelin-starred restaurants instead of actually living in the city you call home? Fair point. Sang-woo leaned back in his chair. Can I ask you something? And you have to be completely honest. Depends on the question. Why did you come tonight? Really? After everything you found in that suitcase, after seeing how invasive my research was, why didn't you just call the police and block my number? Ophelia considered the question while she finished her slice. It deserved an honest answer. Because I'm tired, she said finally. I'm tired of dating apps where everyone lies about their height and their job and whether they actually want a relationship. I'm tired of meeting guys who seem perfect for 3 months and then turn out to be cheating or emotionally unavailable or just looking for someone to cook and clean while they play video games. At least you were honest about being a complete disaster at human connection. There's something refreshing about that. So you're saying my incompetence at romance is actually a selling point? Weirdly, yes. Ophelia reached for another slice. Also, I was curious. My mom always said curiosity would either save my life or end it. Jury's still out on which one tonight is. I'm hoping for the former. They ate in comfortable silence for a moment. Around them, groups of friends laughed and couples leaned close over candlelight. It felt normal. Real. Like they were just two people sharing pizza instead of the result of an artificial intelligence matchmaking project gone sideways. Tell me about your company, Ophelia said. Not the PR version. The real version. What do you actually do all day? Sang-woo's eyes lit up. We build AI systems that help other AI systems learn faster. It's called machine learning optimization. Basically, we're teaching computers how to teach themselves more efficiently. That sounds either incredibly boring or terrifying. Both, honestly. The applications are incredible. Medical diagnosis, climate modeling, traffic systems, financial forecasting. But yes, there's also the potential for misuse. Which is why we're extremely careful about who we work with and how our technology gets implemented. Is that what keeps you up at night? The ethics of it. Sometimes. Mostly what keeps me up is wondering if I'm wasting my life building something that won't matter in 100 years. My parents sacrificed everything so I could have opportunities they never had. I wanted to make them proud. But somewhere along the way, I think I forgot that they also wanted me to be happy. Ophelia heard the vulnerability in his voice. Are you happy? I thought I was. I told myself that work was enough, that success was enough. But then I turned 30 and realized I'd built this empire and had no one to share it with. No one who knew me as anything other than Park Industries CEO. He met her eyes. That's when I started the algorithm project. Not because I thought I could code my way into love, but because I had no idea how else to even begin looking for it. That's kind of sad, actually. I know. He smiled wryly. Not exactly the sexy billionaire image, is it? Honestly, I think I prefer this version. The one who admits he's lonely and doesn't have all the answers. Ophelia poured them both more wine. The sexy billionaire thing is overrated anyway. Too much pressure to be impressed all the time. Well, in that case, full disclosure. I'm terrible at karaoke, I can't dance. I've seen every episode of The Great British Baking Show at least 3 times, and I cry during Pixar movies. Ophelia laughed. Which Pixar movie made you cry the hardest? Up. The opening montage destroys me every single time. Okay, that's fair. That montage is brutal. She leaned forward. Here's my confession. I'm a marketing consultant who hates social media. I think Instagram is performative nonsense and TikTok makes me feel ancient. I have 73 followers on Twitter and half of them are bots. 73? That's impressively low. I know. I'm basically a social media failure. Professionally embarrassing, really. I think it's great. It means you actually live your life instead of performing it for strangers. They talked for another hour, the conversation flowing easily from topic to topic. Ophelia learned that Sang-woo spoke 3 languages, that he'd taught himself to code at age 12, that his first business idea had been an app to help his mother's grocery store manage inventory, and it had failed spectacularly. She told him about her own failures. The marketing campaign that had bombed so badly she'd considered changing careers. The time she'd accidentally sent a client email full of typos to the entire company. Her complete inability to keep houseplants alive despite multiple attempts. I've killed 7 succulents, she admitted. 7. They're supposed to be unkillable. That's actually impressive in its own way. Thank you. I'm very talented at plant murder. By the time they finished eating, it was past 11. The restaurant was starting to clear out, the staff beginning to clean up. Sangwoo paid the check, and they walked back out into the cold February night. So, he said as they stood on the Brooklyn sidewalk. Tomorrow. Valentine's Day. Are we still on? Ophelia thought about it. About the insanity of the evening, the ex-girlfriend drama, the suitcase full of rings, the algorithm that had brought them together. About the way Sangwoo had looked when he talked about his parents, the way he'd given that subway musician $100, the way he'd admitted to crying during Pixar movies. Yeah, she said. We're still on. But I have conditions. I'm listening. First, no chauffeurs or Rolls Royces. We take normal transportation like normal people. Second, no fancy restaurants unless I specifically request one. I want to see how you handle deli sandwiches and food trucks. Third, at some point during the day, you have to do something that scares you. Something you've been avoiding. Sangwoo considered this. Those are reasonable conditions. Can I add one of my own? Depends what it is. At the end of the day, you have to tell me the truth about whether you felt anything. No polite deflection, no saving my feelings. Just honest feedback about whether the 97.3% compatibility translated to any real connection. Ophelia extended her hand. Deal. They shook on it, their hands lingering together a moment longer than necessary. The February air had turned colder, their breath forming small clouds in the darkness. Around them, Brooklyn continued its late-night rhythm, oblivious to the strange negotiation happening on this particular sidewalk. I should get you home, Sangwoo said. It's late. See, this is where the no-chauffeur rule starts. We're taking the subway. Both ways? You're really committed to this. Absolutely. If we're going to do this experiment, we're doing it right. They walked to the subway station together, Ophelia still wearing his suit jacket over her Valentino dress. On the platform, waiting for the train, Sangwoo looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. What? She asked. I'm just thinking that my algorithm predicted 97.3% compatibility, but it didn't predict how much I'd enjoy just talking to you. How easy you'd be to be around. That wasn't in the data. Maybe that's the point. Maybe the best parts of connection can't be quantified. Maybe you're right. The train arrived and they rode back to her neighborhood in comfortable silence. When they reached her building, Sangwoo walked her to her door like it was the most natural thing in the world. So, tomorrow, Ophelia said, fishing her keys out of the designer clutch. What time? How about I pick you up at 9? We'll get breakfast and then see where the day takes us. 9 works. But remember, no fancy car. I'll take the subway. You promise. I promise. He hesitated, then leaned down and kissed her cheek softly. Thank you for taking a chance on this. On me. Ophelia felt her face flush. Thank you for the strangest, most insane evening of my entire life. My pleasure. She watched him walk back down the street toward the subway station, his expensive suit looking rumpled now, his tie loosened. He turned once to wave, and she waved back. Inside her apartment, Ophelia found both suitcases waiting. Her real one that Christine had returned, and the one full of 50 engagement rings. She stood there looking at them both, physical evidence that tonight had actually happened and wasn't some fever dream. Her phone buzzed. Jamie, checking in like she'd promised. Still alive, Ophelia texted back. Going to see him again tomorrow. Jamie's response was a string of shocked emojis followed by details. Now. Tomorrow, Ophelia typed. I need to sleep and process the fact that I might actually be falling for a guy who tried to algorithm his way into my heart. She changed out of the Valentino dress, carefully hanging it in her closet. As she got ready for bed, her mind replayed the evening. The restaurant, Christine's dramatic entrance, the laughter that had surprised even her, the pizza, the easy conversation. The way Sangwoo had looked at her like she was the only person in the world. Are you rooting for Ophelia and Sangwoo? Drop a comment and let us know. And hit that subscribe button because Valentine's Day is about to get real interesting. Ophelia barely slept. She kept replaying the evening in her mind, analyzing every moment, every word, every glance. At 3 a.m, she found herself sitting on her couch, staring at the suitcase full of engagement rings in the dim light from her kitchen. 50 rings. 50 women. And somehow, she was the one sitting here at 3 a.m. unable to stop thinking about Park Sangwoo. Her phone lit up with a text. She grabbed it, expecting Jamie with more questions. It was Sangwoo. Can't sleep. Keep thinking about that pizza. And the company. Ophelia smiled in the darkness. You're supposed to be resting up for our big day tomorrow. His response came quickly. Too excited. Is that pathetic? A 31-year-old billionaire unable to sleep before a date like a teenager? It's kind of endearing actually, Ophelia typed. Though I'm not sleeping either, so I can't judge. What are you thinking about? Honestly? How insane this all is. Yesterday morning I was in LA complaining about my hotel's terrible coffee. Now I'm sitting in my apartment looking at a suitcase full of engagement rings, having agreed to spend Valentine's Day with someone who literally stalked me with artificial intelligence. When you put it that way, it does sound unhinged. Ophelia laughed quietly. And yet here we are. Here we are, Sangwoo confirmed. For what it's worth, I'm glad you grabbed the wrong suitcase. Me too. Good night, Sangwoo. Good night, Ophelia. She finally fell asleep around 4, her phone still in her hand. The alarm went off at 7:30, giving her 90 minutes to get ready. Ophelia stood in front of her closet, suddenly paralyzed by indecision. What did you wear on a date with a billionaire who'd promised to take the subway and eat street food? The Valentino dress felt too formal. Jeans felt too casual. She settled on dark jeans, ankle boots, and a soft cream sweater that made her feel put together, but not overdressed. Minimal makeup, her hair in loose waves. She wanted to look like herself, not some carefully curated version designed to impress. At 8:55, her buzzer rang. Ophelia's heart jumped. She grabbed her coat and headed downstairs, taking a deep breath before pushing open the building's front door. Sangwoo stood on the sidewalk wearing jeans, actual jeans, and a dark sweater under a wool coat. He looked younger in casual clothes, less like a CEO and more like a grad student. His hair was slightly messy, like he'd run his hands through it nervously. You took the subway, Ophelia said, stating the obvious. I promised, didn't I? He held up his Metro card like proof. I even had to buy a new one. My old card expired 4 years ago. That's both impressive and depressing. I'm choosing to focus on impressive. He smiled. You look beautiful. You look different. Good different. I raided my college wardrobe. Wasn't sure I even still owned jeans. He gestured down the street. I thought we could get breakfast at this place in Williamsburg. It's called Egg. Apparently they're famous for their biscuits. You researched brunch spots? Old habits. Sorry. Should I have just winged it? Ophelia looped her arm through his. The research is fine. It's the execution that matters. Let's go. They took the subway to Williamsburg, standing close together as the car swayed through tunnels. Ophelia noticed the way Sangwoo watched everything with quiet fascination, the performers, the commuters, the ads lining the walls. Like he was studying a world he'd forgotten existed. Egg was packed with the Sunday brunch crowd, but they only waited 20 minutes for a table. The restaurant was small and cozy, mismatched chairs and handwritten menus, the smell of fresh biscuits and coffee filling the air. This is perfect, Sangwoo said as they slid into their seats. They ordered biscuits with gravy for him, the olive oil fried egg for her, coffee for both. While they waited, Sangwoo pulled out his phone. I need to show you something, he said, turning the screen toward her. It was a deletion confirmation. The entire algorithm database, all the files, all the research on the 50 women. All of it being permanently erased. I'm deleting it, he said. All of it. The files, the photos, the compatibility scores. Everything except your contact information, and that's only if you want me to keep it. Ophelia stared at the screen. Why? Because you were right. You can't calculate your way into someone's heart. And keeping those files, holding onto that data, it feels like cheating. Like I'm not trusting the actual connection we might be building. He hesitated. Also, it's creepy. I can admit that now. It seemed logical when I was alone in my office at 2 a.m., but seeing Christine last night, hearing her talk about tracking me for years, I realized I'd become exactly what I was afraid of. Someone who treats relationships like transactions. That's very self-aware of you. My therapist would be proud. He pressed the delete button. There. It's gone. Their food arrived, and for a few minutes they ate in comfortable silence. The biscuits were incredible, fluffy, and buttery. Ophelia watched Sangwoo eat with obvious enjoyment, completely unself-conscious. Okay, she said. Remember the condition I gave you? About doing something that scares you. I remember. I want to know what it is. What scares you? Sangwoo set down his fork. My father. Your father scares you? Not like that. He's the kindest man I know. But I'm terrified of disappointing him. He worked 16-hour days at that grocery store so I could go to college. He never complained, never showed any resentment. He just worked. And now I've given him this comfortable retirement, but I haven't given him what he actually wants. Which is grandchildren. A daughter-in-law to share meals with. The knowledge that I won't die alone surrounded by money instead of family. Sangwoo's voice was quiet. He asks me every week when I'm going to settle down. And every week I dodge the question because I don't know how to explain that I'm broken in ways that make normal relationships feel impossible. Ophelia reached across the table and took his hand. You're not broken. You're just someone who thinks too much. Isn't that the same thing? No. Broken means unfixable. You're just stuck in your own head. There's a difference. Sangwoo squeezed her hand gently. So, what's the scary thing you want me to do? Call your father. Tell him about last night. About me. About the fact that you're on a date right now and it's going well. His eyes widened. Are you serious? Completely. You said you'd do something that scares you. This qualifies. He'll have 1,000 questions. He'll want to meet you immediately. He'll probably start planning the wedding. So, let him be excited. Let him hope. You've spent 10 years keeping your personal life separate from your family. Maybe it's time to let them in. Sangwoo looked at his phone like it might bite him. Then he unlocked it and pulled up his father's contact. He pressed call and put it on speaker. It rang 3 times before a man's voice answered in Korean. Sangwoo responded in the same language, his tone respectful. Ophelia couldn't understand the words, but she heard the warmth in the conversation. Then Sangwoo switched to English. Appa, I'm here with someone. Her name is Ophelia. We're having breakfast together. There was a pause. Then the voice on the other end erupted in rapid Korean, the tone clearly excited. Sangwoo's face flushed. Yes, she's Korean. No, wait, Appa, she's not Korean. She's American. African American. Yes, I know Amma wants Korean grandchildren. Appa, can you please? Ophelia couldn't help but laugh. Sangwoo shot her a helpless look. He wants to know if you're single, if you have a good job, and if you like kimchi, Sangwoo translated. Yes, and I've never tried it, but I'm willing to learn, Ophelia said loudly enough for the phone to pick up. There was more rapid Korean, then Sangwoo's father switched to accented English. You bring her to dinner. Tonight. Your Amma will make galbi. You come, yes? Sangwoo looked at Ophelia, panic in his eyes. She nodded, surprising herself. We'll be there, Appa, Sangwoo said. Good. 6 o'clock. Don't be late. Your Amma will make extra banchan. She's been waiting 10 years for you to bring someone home. The call ended. Sangwoo stared at his phone like he couldn't believe what had just happened. I can't believe you just agreed to meet my parents, he said. I can't believe you just told them about me after knowing me for 12 hours. You told me to do something that scares me. That was terrifying. Good. Now we're both terrified together. Ophelia grinned. What's galbi? Korean barbecue. Short ribs marinated in soy sauce and pear. My mother's galbi is legendary. She'll cook enough food for 20 people even though it's just the 4 of us. I'm looking forward to it. You say that now. Wait until my mother starts asking about your family tree and whether you want children and what kind of wedding you'd prefer. Sangwoo, we've been on one date. Korean mothers don't care about timelines. They care about results. But he was smiling, the fear replaced by something that looked like joy. Thank you for pushing me to do that. I've been avoiding that conversation for years. What are you doing with the rest of your life that's so scary if you can handle that? They finished breakfast and stepped back out into the cold February morning. Valentine's Day in New York City, the streets full of couples holding flowers and heart-shaped balloons. So, Sangwoo said, we have 8 hours until we need to be in Westchester for dinner. What do you want to do? Ophelia thought about it. Show me your New York. Not the billionaire version. The version from when you were just a kid who loved computers and had big dreams. That's all in Queens. Then let's go to Queens. What would you want to do on a Valentine's Day date in New York City? Tell us in the comments and don't forget to hit that like button. They took the train to Queens, riding through neighborhoods that gradually shifted from hipster Brooklyn to working-class immigrant communities. Sangwoo's entire demeanor changed as they got closer to his childhood home. He sat straighter, his eyes tracking familiar landmarks through the window. That's where I had my first job, he said, pointing to a small pharmacy. I was 14, stocking shelves after school. The owner, Mr. Kim, used to let me use his computer in the back room during my breaks. That's where I taught myself to code. What was the first thing you programmed? A calculator that could convert Korean won to dollars. Mr. Kim's customers were always asking him for the exchange rate. I thought if I could build something to help him, he'd let me use the computer more often. Did it work? The program worked perfectly. But Mr. Kim had no idea how to use it. Sangwoo smiled at the memory. He kept it on the computer anyway. Said it made him look modern and technical. He probably never opened it once. They got off at his old stop and walked through streets lined with Korean grocery stores, restaurants with menus only in Hangul, beauty shops advertising K-pop star-endorsed products. Ophelia could feel the energy here, different from Manhattan's polish or Brooklyn's artisanal coolness. This was a neighborhood built by immigrants for immigrants, practical and vibrant and alive. Sangwoo stopped in front of a narrow storefront with faded paint. The windows were papered over, a for-lease sign hanging crooked in the door. This was my parents' store, he said quietly. Park's Grocery. They sold it 5 years ago when I finally convinced them to retire. Ophelia looked at the empty building, trying to imagine a younger Sangwoo stocking shelves, doing homework behind the counter, watching his parents work themselves to exhaustion. I used to hate this place, Sangwoo continued. Every day after school while my friends were playing basketball or hanging out, I was here. Pricing items, helping customers, cleaning. I resented it so much. I thought my parents were wasting their lives, working so hard for so little. When did you stop hating it? When I was 25 and my first company got acquired for $20 million. I came here to tell them, to show them the check, to prove that their sacrifice had meant something. My father was restocking the produce section. He looked at the check, looked at me, and said, "Good. Now you can afford to take a day off and visit us more often." Sangwoo's voice cracked slightly. That's when I understood. They didn't work this hard so I could make money. They worked this hard so I could have choices they never had. And I'd spent 10 years choosing everything except the things that actually mattered. Time with them. Relationships. A life outside of work. Ophelia slipped her hand into his. You're here now. Because an algorithm told me I was lonely. He laughed softly. Even my personal growth is data-driven. Maybe. Or maybe the algorithm just gave you permission to admit what you already knew. They stood there for a moment, two people on a Sunday morning in Queens, holding hands in front of an empty grocery store while the neighborhood moved around them. Come on, Sangwoo said. There's something else I want to show you. He led her 3 blocks down to a small playground wedged between apartment buildings. It was modest, just swings and a slide and some monkey bars, but clearly well used. A few kids played there despite the cold, their parents watching from nearby benches. This is where I used to come when I needed to think, Sangwoo said. After the store closed at 9 p.m., I'd tell my parents I was going to study at the library, but really I'd come here. I'd sit on those swings and write code in my head, solving problems, building programs I didn't have a computer good enough to actually run. That's incredibly sad and incredibly ambitious at the same time. That's pretty much my entire childhood. He walked over to the swings, sat down on one, and gestured for her to take the one next to him. I used to promise myself that someday I'd be successful enough to never have to come back here. That I'd leave Queens behind and never look back. But you didn't. No. I bought my parents a house in Westchester, and I got an apartment in Manhattan, but I still come back here sometimes. Usually when I'm stuck on a problem. There's something about this place that reminds me why I started. Not for the money or the success, but because I wanted to build something that mattered. Ophelia pushed off gently, swinging in small arcs. What problem brought you here most recently? Sangwoo was quiet for a moment. About 6 months ago, right before I started the algorithm project. I just closed a deal that valued my company at $8 billion. I was on the cover of Forbes. Everyone was calling me a genius, a visionary. And I came here and sat on this exact swing and realized I had no one to celebrate with. No one who cared about me as anything other than Park Sangwoo, CEO. He looked at her directly. That's when I decided I needed to fix it. Like everything else in my life, I treated it as a problem that needed solving. Build an algorithm, find compatible candidates, execute a plan. Very clinical. Very efficient. Very lonely, Ophelia added softly. Yeah, very lonely. He stopped swinging. But then you opened the wrong suitcase. And none of my careful plans mattered anymore because you laughed at the whole absurd situation and still agreed to have pizza with me. You called me out on my nonsense and somehow still gave me a chance. You're making me sound way more generous than I am. I'm just curious and maybe a little reckless. You're perfect. The word hung in the cold February air between them. Ophelia felt her heart skip. I'm not perfect, she said. I kill succulents, remember? I'm terrible at social media. I stayed in a relationship for 3 years with someone who was cheating on me because I was too scared of being alone. I'm just as much of a mess as you are. Then we're a mess together. Sangwoo reached out and gently pushed a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was so tender, so unexpected, that Ophelia felt tears prick at her eyes. Can I kiss you? He asked quietly. We're in a children's playground. That seems inappropriate. Fair point. But he didn't move away, and neither did she. They sat there on the swings, so close their knees touched, until one of the kids on the slide yelled something in Korean and they both laughed, the tension breaking. Come on, Ophelia said, standing up. We have 5 more hours before we need to face your parents. Show me where you went to high school. I want to see teenage Sangwoo's stomping grounds. They spent the afternoon wandering through his past. The high school where he'd been captain of the math team and hopeless at basketball. The library where he'd actually studied, surrounded by computer programming books he'd read cover to cover. The bubble tea shop where he'd had his first date at 16 with a girl named Susan who dumped him 3 weeks later for someone with a car. She made the right choice, Sangwoo said. I was insufferable. All I talked about was code and startup ideas. Some things never change, Ophelia teased. Hey, I've expanded my conversational repertoire. Now I also talk about algorithms and machine learning. Much better. At 4 o'clock, they stopped at a Korean bakery and bought a box of pastries to bring to his parents' house. The owner, an elderly woman, recognized Sang-woo immediately and launched into rapid Korean, gesturing animatedly. Sang-woo responded in kind, his whole face brightening. What was that about? Ophelia asked as they left. She wanted to know if you were my girlfriend. I told her we'd just met. She said that didn't matter, your aura was good, and I should marry you before someone else does. Your neighborhood is very invested in your love life. Korean communities are like that. Everyone knows everyone's business. It used to drive me crazy, but now I kind of miss it. By 5 o'clock, they were on the train to Westchester. Ophelia could feel Sang-woo's nervous energy increasing with every stop. They're going to love me, she said. You don't know that. I do. Because you love them and they love you, and anyone who makes you this happy is going to be welcome. What if they think this is too fast? What if they think I'm being impulsive? Then you tell them the truth. That you used an algorithm to find me, that I grabbed the wrong suitcase, that your ex-girlfriend crashed our first date, and that despite all of that insanity, you really like me and want to see where this goes. Sang-woo stared at her. That's your strategy? Tell them everything. Honesty worked pretty well for you so far, didn't it? He considered this. I suppose it did. They arrived at the Westchester station at 5:45. Sang-woo called an Uber. My parents live in the suburbs, public transportation doesn't reach their neighborhood, and 15 minutes later they pulled up to a beautiful craftsman-style house with a perfectly manicured front garden. Before they could even reach the door, it flew open. Sang-woo's mother stood there, tiny and fierce in an apron, her face breaking into the brightest smile Ophelia had ever seen. She pulled Sang-woo into a hug, then immediately turned to Ophelia and did the same, chattering in Korean the entire time. She doesn't speak Korean, Sang-woo said gently. His mother switched to English immediately. Welcome, welcome. You are so beautiful. Come in, come in. Dinner is almost ready. You must be starving. Sang-woo, why didn't you tell me she was so pretty? I would have made more food. You made enough food to feed the entire neighborhood, Not enough. Never enough. She pulled Ophelia inside. The house smelled incredible. Grilled meat, rice, garlic, sesame oil. The dining table was already set with what looked like 20 different dishes, colorful and abundant. Sang-woo's father appeared from the kitchen, also wearing an apron, his face gentle and kind. He looked at Ophelia and smiled. Welcome to our home, he said in careful English. Our son finally brings someone to meet us. This is a good day. Is this the perfect Valentine's Day or what? Comment below and don't forget to subscribe to see how this family dinner goes. Dinner was chaos in the best possible way. Sang-woo's mother, whose name was Young-mi, kept piling more food onto Ophelia's plate despite her protests. His father, Jin-ho, asked her gentle questions about her work, her family, her life, treating each answer like it was the most fascinating thing he'd ever heard. And through it all, Sang-woo sat beside her, translating when his parents slipped into Korean, his hand occasionally finding hers under the table. Your mother was a teacher? Young-mi said, her eyes softening. Teaching is noble work. Very important. My sister was teacher in Korea before coming to America. She taught English literature, Ophelia said. She wanted me to love books the way she did. I think I disappointed her by going into marketing instead. No, Jin-ho said firmly. You make people understand products, yes? You tell stories about things. This is also teaching. Different form, same heart. Ophelia felt her throat tighten. She'd never thought about her work that way before. Young-mi served the galbi, the marinated short ribs perfectly charred and glistening. Ophelia took a bite and actually moaned at how good it was. Sang-woo's mother beamed. She likes Korean food. This is good sign, Young-mi announced, as if Ophelia's enjoyment of galbi was confirmation of her suitability as a future daughter-in-law. Sang-woo said, his ears turning red. Please. What? I cannot be happy? You bring a girl home for first time in 10 years. I am allowed to be excited. Jin-ho chuckled. Your has been waiting very long time. You must forgive her enthusiasm. There's nothing to forgive, Ophelia said. This is wonderful. All of it. Thank you for welcoming me into your home. Young-mi reached across the table and squeezed Ophelia's hand. You make our son smile. Real smile, not business smile. That is all we want. For him to be happy. After dinner, while Young-mi insisted on packing enough leftovers to feed them for a week, Jin-ho pulled Sang-woo aside. Ophelia could see them through the kitchen window, standing in the backyard, father and son talking quietly. He worries about Sang-woo, Young-mi said softly, following Ophelia's gaze. Works too much. No balance. We built business so he could have better life, but he builds bigger business and has no life at all. Makes father very sad. He's trying to change that, Ophelia said. Because of you? Maybe. Or maybe I just showed up at the right time when he was ready to change. Youngmi studied her for a long moment. You are a smart girl. Good head on shoulders. Also, you have kind eyes. I can tell these things. Been watching people my whole life. Thank you. Sangwoo needs kind person. Someone who sees him, not his money. Someone who makes him remember to be human, not just successful. She handed Ophelia a container of kimchi. You do this, yes? I can try. Good. That is all anyone can do. Try. Outside, Jinho was speaking in Korean, his hand on Sangwoo's shoulder. Sangwoo nodded, his expression serious, then emotional. They embraced, and Ophelia looked away, feeling like she was intruding on something private. When they came back inside, Sangwoo's eyes were suspiciously bright. We should go, he said quietly. It's getting late. Youngmi hugged them both, making Sangwoo promise to visit next week and Ophelia promise to come back soon. Jinho shook Ophelia's hand with both of his grip warm and firm. Take care of my son, he said. He is very smart with computers, very stupid with people. Needs someone to help him. Appa, Sangwoo protested. What? It is true. You know it is true. In the Uber back to the train station, Sangwoo was quiet. Ophelia didn't push, just sat close to him, their shoulders touching. Finally, he spoke. My father told me something tonight. He said when he came to America, he was terrified every single day. Terrified of failing, of disappointing my mother, of not being able to provide. But every morning he got up anyway and went to that grocery store because he had something more important than fear. He had hope. Sangwoo turned to look at her. He said I've spent 10 years being successful, but I stopped having hope. Stopped believing that anything beyond work was possible for me. And then tonight, seeing me with you, he said he saw hope in my eyes again. The same hope he had when he first came to this country. Your parents are incredible people. They are. And I've been taking them for granted while I built my empire. He took her hand. I don't want to do that anymore. With them or with this, with us. Us, Ophelia repeated softly. That's a big word for people who met yesterday. I know. And maybe I'm being impulsive and irrational. Maybe the algorithm was right about compatibility but wrong about timing. Maybe we're moving too fast. He squeezed her hand. But I don't care. For the first time in 10 years, I don't want to calculate the risk or optimize the outcome. I just want to see where this goes. They rode the train back to Brooklyn in comfortable silence, their hands intertwined. When they reached Ophelia's building, it was nearly 10 p.m. Valentine's Day was almost over. So, Sangwoo said as they stood on her stoop. End of the day. You promised me honest feedback. Did you feel anything? Did the 97.3% translate to actual connection? Ophelia pretended to think about it. Well, let's review. You took me to your childhood neighborhood, showed me your vulnerable side, introduced me to your parents, and made me eat enough Korean food to feed a small army. You also deleted all your creepy stalker files and agreed to multiple subway rides. And I had the best Valentine's Day of my entire life. Sangwoo's face transformed, relief and joy mixing together. Really? Really? Though I should mention, the bar was pretty low. Last year I spent Valentine's Day watching my ex's Instagram stories of him with his new girlfriend. That's depressing. It was. This was better. She stepped closer to him. Much better. Can I kiss you now? We're not in a children's playground anymore. We're on a public street. I'll risk it. He leaned down and kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise. Ophelia kissed him back, her arms wrapping around his neck, feeling like she was in one of those romantic comedies her mother had loved. Except this was real. Messy and complicated and absolutely real. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were smiling. So, Sangwoo said, tomorrow? Can I see you tomorrow? You're very eager for someone who claimed to be bad at relationships. I'm a fast learner. It's kind of my thing. Tomorrow works. But I'm picking the activity this time. No algorithms, no plans. Just spontaneous adventure. I can do spontaneous. We'll see about that. She kissed him one more time, quick and light, then headed inside. At her apartment door, she turned to wave. He was still standing on the sidewalk, watching her, looking like a man who'd just discovered something he didn't know he'd been searching for his entire life. Inside, Ophelia leaned against her closed door and let out a long breath. Her phone buzzed. Jamie, of course. Details. Now. I've been waiting all day. Ophelia smiled and called her instead of texting. Tell me everything, Jamie demanded the second she picked up. I met his parents. You what? On the first date? Are you insane? Probably. But Jamie, it was perfect. Completely chaotic and overwhelming and perfect. Ophelia walked over to her window, looking out at the Brooklyn street below. I think I really like him. Like, really, really like him. The stalker billionaire with the creepy algorithm? He deleted the algorithm. And he's not creepy. He's just socially awkward and overanalytical and kind of sweet in this completely unexpected way. This is insane. You know that, right? This entire situation is completely unhinged. I know. Ophelia pressed her hand against the cold window glass. But maybe that's okay. Maybe the best things in life are a little bit insane. They talked for another hour, Ophelia recounting every detail of the day. When she finally hung up and got ready for bed, her phone buzzed one more time. Sangwoo, thank you for today. For taking a chance on an awkward billionaire with questionable social skills and an algorithm obsession. Sweet dreams. Ophelia, thank you for the best Valentine's Day ever. Even if it started with me accidentally stealing your suitcase full of 50 engagement rings. Sleep well. Sangwoo, those rings are getting donated to charity, by the way. All 50. Tomorrow. Ophelia, all 50? You're not keeping even one? Sangwoo, no. When I'm ready for that, I want to pick the ring with you. Not with an algorithm. Deal? Ophelia, deal. Good night, Sangwoo. Sangwoo, good night, Ophelia. She fell asleep with her phone in her hand and a smile on her face, dreaming of Korean barbecue and subway rides and a man who'd tried to calculate love and found it anyway, in the most unexpected way possible. 3 months later, Ophelia would look back on Valentine's Eve as the night everything changed. The night she grabbed the wrong suitcase and found the right person. The night an algorithm designed to optimize compatibility accidentally created something that couldn't be quantified or predicted or calculated. Real, messy, beautiful human connection. And she would think about her mother, who'd believed in serendipity and magic, and realized that maybe her mother had been right all along. Not about how love happens, but about the fact that when it does, it's worth believing in. Even if it takes a billionaire's AI algorithm and 50 engagement rings and one very wrong suitcase to find it. So, what did you think of Ophelia and Sangwoo's story? Would you take a chance on love that started this crazy? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this wild Valentine's Day tale, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories. Share this with someone who believes in second chances, unexpected connections, and the beautiful chaos of falling in love. Because sometimes the best algorithms are the ones written by fate itself. Thanks for watching, and remember, your perfect match might just be one wrong suitcase away.